All right, question for you. What comes to mind when you think of Delaware? Perhaps it's being the first state to ratify the U.S. Constitution. Maybe you think of its beaches, Rehoboth, Bethany, Dewey, much more. But Delaware also has acres of land filled with natural resources that a local nonprofit is working to protect.
Yeah, in fact, they've been doing so for more than 60 years. Delaware Wild Lands takes their mission seriously. We went out to Frankfort to meet a few team members and learn more. A purpose to protect and restore. Delaware Wild Lands might be a small organization in staff size, but it's large in land.
We are the largest nonprofit, non-government landowner. We own 21,800 acres of land throughout the state, primarily to preserve land for the purposes of wildlife and give them a refuge and make sure that our biodiversity thrives, that we provide clean air, clean water, healthy farms and forests.
The nonprofit got going back in 1961, all because a couple of people cared about conservation.
When Shell Oil wanted to build a refinery up in Newcastle County, and a group of really motivated citizens decided they wanted to oppose that because it would destroy the marshland, the freshwater wetlands, and the forest. So they mobilized and were successful eventually in thwarting the development of that. And that's really how Delaware Wild Lands became known. But even before that, Delaware Wild Lands' very first purchase was Trussam Pond here in Sussex County. And we sold that to the state as an addition to the Trap Pond complex because of the majestic beauty of that area. And we felt it was important for people to have access to that property. For our other properties that we own, maintain, and restore now, they are considered to be private because it is a wildlife refuge.
And so for 60 plus years, Delaware Wild Lands has acquired acres with the mission of preserving the area's natural resources.
We go and work with willing landowners to protect and conserve their property and then restore it for wildlife habitat. We do wetlands restoration, we do reforestation projects.
That land includes the 10,800 acres of the Great Cypress Swamp.
The Great Cypress Swamp is actually the largest contiguous freshwater wetland and largest contiguous forest remaining on the Delmarva Peninsula. So it's that much more important for wildlife habitat, for clean air and clean water. And you can get a sense of that out here, right? There's no road noise, there's no cell phone towers, there's no cell phone service. It really is that wild part of Delaware.
Perhaps the Delaware that's not always advertised.
I think people do appreciate the outdoor amenities of Delaware, right? The beach communities. We've developed a lot of biking and bikeways recently. I think a lot of people who come to Delaware don't realize that we are in the Mid-Atlantic Flyway, which is like a super highway for bird migrations. And the bird diversity in Delaware and this Mid-Atlantic area is some of the best around the world. So we're learning about that with the help of organizations like Wild Earth Allies and trying to help people understand that not only is it important here locally, but also has importance for us globally.
And restoring the hydrology.
That partnership with Wild Earth Allies, Kate Hackett speaks of, began not long ago.
We began a discussion with Delaware Wild Lands 2 years ago, and very quickly we saw complementarity in our approaches. And we started talking about a partnership because of, again, these complementary skills and experiences from different parts of the world.
The work these organizations are doing together impacts you and me, too.
Biodiversity is important for a lot of reasons. People don't realize it, but a lot of our pharmaceuticals are developed from compounds that are found in nature. Public health improves when we have nature around us, not only because forests and wetlands provide clean air and clean water, but more recent scientific data are showing that even when you are looking at nature or hiking in nature, you start to change. Your brain waves slow down, your heart rate slows down, your cortisol levels or your stress hormones reduce. So all of these reasons, it's very important to protect nature.
This area is no longer forested. It's mostly, depending on the time of the year, standing water, emergent wetland vegetation.
It's a mission Andrew Martin believes in strongly.
My father actually has worked for Delaware Wild Lands for about 45 years now. So I came up into it, and I went off to go to school thinking I was going to go a different direction, but spent a couple summers working for Delaware State Parks, and then a couple summers working for Wild Lands, and kind of came back full circle.
And a mission our area's always going to need.
So our work is never done, right? And we try to adapt to what's happening, whether that is development or our forests are being cut down or we have sea levels rise, so it changes over time. But right now we have these land complexes and we are working to expand those areas of protected land and also connect them to other areas of protected land. So wildlife basically has a travel corridor and they can move from one area to another area without having to face predators or look too far for food sources. So ultimately, we kind of want to develop that transportation network for wildlife between big cores of protected habitat.
Of course, a great organization with a very powerful mission.
And they've been doing it for over 60 years.
More than 60 years. That's how you know it's really important.
No
you know?
kidding, right.
60 more to go, at
60
least.
more to go.
All right, well, up next, of course, we're going to dive into one of their most recent projects, the Longfield Restoration Project.
Stick around, Delmarva Live. Be right back.
Before the break, we introduced you to Delaware Wild Lands. The 60-plus-year-old nonprofit organization is on a mission to protect and restore the natural areas of Delaware through purchasing and managing strategic acres.
Now, you had mentioned something before we went to break.
Yep.
That one of their current projects right now that's really important to them is the Longfield Restoration Project.
Yes, it is their newest undertaking. It's at the Great Cypress Swamp, and long-term, it's going to provide clean water and clean air and create habitat for all kinds of species. They took us out to the area to see it all up close.
So this is the last of a series of impoundments that we installed in our Longfield restoration site.
Conservation in action. This is currently the biggest project for Delaware Wild Lands, what they call the Longfield Restoration.
And that's about an 80-acre ag field directly adjacent to a previous wetland restoration project that we did, where we've raised water levels and the ag field itself just got too wet for the farmer we had coming in to continue to get a crop off of. So we've redirected water through our ditch system out into that field through a series of impoundments and swales that let the water come in, fill up those impoundments. But this could easily hold another 6 to 8 inches of water and then would outflow through here. So we put the stone down here to keep it from eroding out as water moves out. And the idea here is that each of these impoundments feeds the next one coming towards the outflow. The leveling of them, the elevation of them is slightly lower as we come along. And that keeps this system, when we have a lot more rainfall, when we have a lot more standing water, keeps it a little bit more dynamic, keeps some water moving through the system. This is the water control structure that holds back the water in the impoundments in the Longfield.
What this will do, according to field ecologist Andrew Martin, is correct the damage done by ditching and draining the landscape for commercial operations and purify the water headed towards the Delaware inland bays and Pocomoke River.
So long term, it's really just going to continue to kind of clean the water, provide clean water, clean air, create habitat for reptiles, amphibians, in some cases fish that end up out in some of the flooded areas, and really help turn the swamp back into what it was. So if you look at an aerial map of the swamp and the surrounding area, you'll see it's about the most ditched place in the universe here in southern Sussex. And we're surrounded on all sides by agriculture. And the original goal of the previous landowner in the swamp was to drain off more of the landscape and make it more economically productive.
Another piece of this project is planting thousands of Atlantic white cedar, bald cypress, and mixed hardwood trees.
In the 1780s, the concentration would have been about 25% Atlantic white cedar and 10 to 15% bald cypress out here. And that's no longer the case, really, with the changing hydrology out here, with some aggressive timbering practices in the past. Those species have been really, really knocked down to just a trace of what they used to be.
From our perspective as Wild Earth Allies, what we've been able to do is draw the international linkages for the importance of this land unit.
Delaware Wild Lands partner Wild Earth Allies has helped with that effort. Adam Henson is the conservation director.
So we have worked with them to design a monitoring protocol to establish a system for monitoring survival rates of these tree species that are planted, to compare the different management practices to mitigate against herbivory from deer and other wildlife. So this is it's a long-term project. This is rewilding, one of the last refuges on the Delmarva for this forested wetland ecosystem. So this is a plot that has been fenced to protect from deer and herbivory from deer. Next to this plot that's fenced is a control plot mimicking natural conditions. So over time, we'll be able to measure the difference between the different management regimes of fenced and unfenced. And over time, we'll then be able to better restore this natural ecosystem.
Andrew says they're still in the planting phase, but it's a project they won't ever finish exactly.
Out there, we've probably got another year or two of additional plantings, but in terms of restoration in the swamp, planting particularly Atlantic white cedar and bald cypress, but also some hardwood species, we're never going to be done.
But where patience prevails, there is progress. For somebody like you who's, obviously really passionate about this, to kind of see the beginnings of the projects going on, what's that like to be out here and see that?
Oh, there's no place better, right? To actually have been talking with Wild Earth Allies for 2 years, to know how we're going to leverage our organizational strengths, and then to see a project on the ground is just wonderful, really exciting.
And of course, Delaware Wild Lands has many other important projects going on. To learn more about those, you can head to delmarvalife.com. Jimmy, one of the questions I asked Andrew during this all, I was thinking about planting a seed of a tree, right? How do you plant a seed and know it's not going to grow and you're not going to see the fruits of it for maybe years and years and years? I think that's incredible work, because to me, it's like I want instant satisfaction yesterday from what I'm doing today. You know what I mean?
You're planting the seed for the next generation.
I think it's cool stuff.
There you go. How about that?